We're back. Greg, I interrupted you at the end of that last segment, I apologize. But when you were talking about things that the Tea Party represents and everything, part of the problem that I have is it seems to be like this movement that has no specifics to it, that is like an expression of mass frustration, which that's like saying existentialism is a philosophy. And I think Camus said if we were just using existence as a basis for a philosophy, it doesn't have any meaning. Why? I mean, that's how I perceive it. I don't see a lot of the specifics there. Are there? And you're talking about different groups. Are there any kind of plans to coalesce and have a specific political party?
No, not at all. I mean, there was fear early on, I think, with the two established parties that this would morph into a third party. But I think people in the Tea Party wanted to do that. But whether you like the two-party system or not, it's here, and it's hard for a third party to start and ever have any credibility. I mean, the libertarians who mirror a lot of our beliefs, but I'm not going to invest my time in the Libertarian Party because, in my mind, it's a wasted vote. And if we start a Tea Party, it just further dilutes us. So we're not in it just to put our foot down and make our positions known. We're in it to win and be effective, and that means incremental victory, whether we defeat a Democrat or defeat a Republican. Now, the Republican Party closer aligned with our beliefs, but we'll clean it up. I mean, there's targets we are focused on, have actually defeated in the Republican Party. So it's not just going after the Democrats. We see both sides having responsibility to where this country is right now. And I mean, you can look around right now and say, it's not working. This double-dip recession, I don't remember getting out of the first recession.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it in terms of, I know you're saying that you don't go, I don't see us as really having a two-party system. Paul and I have had this discussion before. I think basically both parties nationally are essentially the same power of interest, same money. It just kind of moves around a little bit between them. But when it comes down to the recession that we're in right now, I don't perceive, and I am making an argument here, I don't perceive the Tea Party or the tea baggers. I mean, I prefer to just refer to them as tea baggers because I don't think that they're doing things positive generally. I mean, look at what they did in terms of the debt ceiling. There was a crisis created over the debt ceiling for no reason at all. We lost our credit rating here in the United States, and I think that you would probably agree with me in large part is because of concerns raised by people from the Tea Party movement.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
No, I would say President Obama created an artificial deadline. We were not going to default on our interest payments. There's plenty of money coming in to pay those. They would have had to make some cuts somewhere else. They didn't want to do it. Our side of the Republicans caved. They lost that battle completely, and we're upset.
I'm confused how you can say that your side lost that particular battle when you used the minority position in the Senate and a slight majority in the Congress to twist the arm of the president in order to get things passed completely unrelated to what was the issue at the time, which was the payment of certain debt and obligations.
The Republicans twisted his arm?
Oh, I'd say yes.
And the president wanted the debt ceiling not to be discussed again until after the election, and he got that. So the Republicans caved into that.
Certainly you would agree that we're not the Tea Party movement. We would not have had that discussion that we need to have about debt. We're borrowing 40% of every dollar that we spend in this.
It's startling to me that now that we have cut taxes to the extreme wealthy and have a tax burden lower than any other industrialized nation and lower than any point historically in the United States history, that now that we have a Democratic president and a recession, which is when the government needs to spend money it's not taking in order to stimulate the economy, now is the point at which we've decided that debt is the problem. Debt isn't the problem when you're in a recession. That was the problem that Hoover had back in the 30s when he decided that not enough stimulus. He did a stimulus, not sufficient. That's why we launched into the Great Depression for an extended period of time. That plus every banking control that used to be on the banks to keep them from engaging in the kind of shenanigans and
I was going to say chicanery.
that they had back in the 20s during the boom period. They then have got all of those restrictions lifted again in the name of too much regulation.
But a lot of that was done by the Democrats when they were in control of the Senate, correct?
Well, that's a joint, I mean, that's where,
Joint
I'm not
responsibility.
defending it, that's a joint responsibility.
I agree.
Much of the time, that was under Republican administrations. Then, we have 8 years of both tax cuts and massive, out-of-control spending on wars by a Republican administration, and not a peep regarding financial responsibility out of even the most conservative Republicans that were in office at the time. Now, I understand you said that the Tea Party is both Republicans and others, but most of the studies that have been done of the membership of the Tea Party finds that most of them are like yourself, Republicans or former Republicans, and just aren't happy that the Republican Party isn't nearly as conservative as they'd like it to be.
Well, no, we're not. We don't think either party as a whole is adhering to the Constitution. Go back to 2006, Democrats had both houses up until last fall. During the Bush administration, they didn't argue. They had the power. He's the president, but they had the power. Congress is the one that makes the spending. The current president, has spent over $4 trillion in his 2.5 years in office. At what point, and you said we're not spending enough, $1.5 trillion minimum. The TARP one was $1 trillion. How much money do we throw at this?
Okay.
And who's paying for it?
TARP came up under Bush.
It
One.
did.
Okay, second, a lot of the military programs that are in effect were carryovers that Obama didn't initiate. But 3, I don't like people saying, well, okay, the Democrats didn't stand up and say something back then. There are very, very few Democrats that are in Congress that would have voiced my opinion at the time, which is that we shouldn't have gone into Iraq. We were lied into a war. That's being several $1 trillion that's being put onto that debt. If that money had been, if we paid out, we spent here in this country what we're paying in Iraq and Afghanistan for their schools over there, which those kids are in need of there, I'm not questioning that. But if we spent that on education over here, I think that would be much more positive because that's our tax dollars. Those are tax dollars that have gone overseas, and what we did was we gave massive tax cuts concomitantly with making more. Nobody's making
And that's the first time in history
Ever.
that we've cut taxes during a war. In the history of the United States.
Are you saying, though, the Tea Party is for interventionism? Because I don't necessarily see them that way. I think probably there are a lot of isolationists within the Tea Party. That's just not an issue that you address, correct?
Right. I mean, we're in Libya now, in Yemen, and
The
the
war.
war. I thought he was the president in the wars. He's ramped them up. He's pulled down some troops out of Iraq, but the broad brush Tea Party was in support of those wars. I mean, I think we should have gone into Afghanistan and Lebanon. And when Iraq was a counterbalance to Iran, and now look, now we're going to have to confront Iran.
I think there's a misunderstanding with the point that I'm making. I'm not saying the Tea Party's in favor of wars. What I'm saying is that there wasn't a peep out of anyone on the right-hand side of the political spectrum regarding paying for this stuff while it was happening. And only now, when there's a Democratic president, and he is trying to do anything, any initiative to try and make the country work better, now the only thing that anyone wants to discuss is debt. But no one wanted to discuss debt when that debt was being accrued. As a matter of fact, the first thing that happened was the squeeze to extend these insane Bush tax cuts, which frankly don't help anyone. People only spend what they need to spend.
And also in terms of all those tax breaks, there's $2 million that business is basically sitting on right now because they had such a good time in the last few years. That's all money that's sitting there that's not doing anything in this economy.
Why would they spend it? He changes the rules. We don't know what this president's going to do. I don't have that money to sit on. I'm a small businessman. I don't know what tax cuts you're referring to that I haven't seen them. Secondly, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. If I were a conglomerate, I would move my operations overseas immediately if I could. I can. I'm a service-oriented business. But the tax cut, the pile of money, when the rules are being changed by both parties, we don't know what's going to happen with this president, this administration. I wouldn't spend a dime in this economy if I were a business.
In other words, if everything had stayed static, if we had just left everything the way Bush wanted, and this goes back to what we were talking last week in principle on state contracts, where they make a 50 or 75-year contract, a governmental entity does, and ties the hands of the next administration coming in. Okay, well, you're saying, well, and Bush made tax cuts for the rich. The very highest 1-2% got big tax cuts. Their rates decreased. Those are the tax cuts we're talking about. The corporate tax rates are illusory because corporations can move offshore. Corporations can do certain things so that GE, for example, didn't pay any taxes last year.
They haven't.
And
So they don't have to pay. I mean, the corporate tax rates we can say, oh, they're high, but all a corporation has to do is disperse their profits to their stockholders, and that's it. End of tax. But they don't do that now. The days of dividends, those are gone. And why are they gone? Because our marginal tax rate is so low on individuals that all the profits out of these corporations is being sucked out of the upper echelon management who control their boards. And the people who own stock in these companies have no control because we, in our government, have prevented them from suing their boards for malfeasance by allowing people to have, in the United States, we have the highest CEO salaries of any nation in the world. And that, the encouragement of that is the low marginal tax rate. If over $7 million a year, you are taxed at a 90 to 95% rate, there's no incentive to get your board to try and give you $21 million a year. It both discourages that kind of lifting money out of the group coffer in the corporation, and the corporation is owned by the people who own the stock, and it also, a high marginal tax rate, also helps prevent the theft, the corporate theft that goes on, where they hide the thievery by saying it's compensation, which you can talk about the former owner, I think, of the Sun-Times.
oh, Rupert Murdoch.
Well, this is post Rupert's. I think he was he's from Canada. Black, I think is his name. Where he was essentially raiding his company for his own profits because he doesn't pay any taxes.
I agree with the comment on CEO pay being too high. I don't agree with Luther, your reason why. The problem is, you look at these boards, they're all made up by other CEOs and other high-ranking executives. And they vote for higher pay for CEO because it's, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's the problem. And I think the rules need to be changed in that regard.
And I disagree with you in terms of not knowing what's going to be happening one day to the next. I think we have a very stable, there will be phrases tossed out there that people believe just because the phrases are tossed out. We have a very stable, had a really stable economic system and governmental system. I think that if we bring back the controls that were in place 20, 30 years ago, that's not saying that we're unstable right now. It's not unfairly changing the rules. We're at the end of our second segment.